Hi, how are you? I hope you're having a fantastic week as I am having a fantastic week as well. Now, I wanted to ask you, have you seen some pictures that were going around this week and actually last week from these guys called Kantanka vehicles? And these are African, rather Ghana made armored vehicles. And I saw it and people were talking smack about it. People had all kinds of things to say about it. I thought it was a brilliant idea. And that got me thinking, wait a minute, but we have some car manufacturers in Africa. What are they up to? What are they doing? I see a lot of international car manufacturers in Africa. I see Japan cars in Africa. I see German cars in Africa. And I ask myself, but where are our own guys? What are they doing? That got me investigating, and I've been investigating, and I want to share with you what I found out during my investigation. This is purely from a business perspective, and I hope you will enjoy what I have to share with you. Now, I found four main key. Four key manufacturers in Africa, and these are Kiira Motors in Uganda, IVM Motors in Nigeria, um, Kantanka Motors in Ghana, and Mobius Motors in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, all these guys are already manufacturing, and I'll start with Kiira Motors. I love Kiira Motors. I love the premise behind their business. They're looking at mostly using green energy and looking at conserving the environment as they create automobiles. That is just fantastic. It is the right time to have such kind of a business premise. And I saw one of their buses that is going to hit the market soon. It's going to be the first ever African-made solar-powered bus. That is fantastic. That is so exciting. I cannot wait to see it on the road. I have seen that they have done some testing for their prototypes. The only problem they're having is that there was an issue with during their road testing, and they have to go back again, and they haven't started manufacture yet. So I love the business ideas. I saw their hybrid SUV, and I saw their bus as well, and I think it's gonna be a fantastic venture. If I was an investor, I would definitely be investing in Kiira Motors. I love it. I love that it's African. It has Africa written all over it. It's done mostly by Africa. It's done by Africans, as the funding is African, and that is just beautiful. Now, they haven't I told you they haven't started manufacturing, and they're going to start manufacturing after they fix the issues that they found during their testing. Let's look at the other guys who are, let me look at Kantanka Motors in Ghana. Now, these guys are doing, they call themselves car manufacturers, but from what I am researching and what I'm finding, they are mostly doing assembly. And assembly is not bad. A lot of people are doing assembly, and it's not a bad thing at all. I did find the car, the manufacturer of the parts in China, and these guys specialize in producing parts, and then they will give you to go and assemble it for yourself. And that's what Kantanka is doing from what I am reading and what I'm finding out. So it's really not a manufacturer. It's not much of a manufacturer from what I see. It's not a bad thing. The only thing about it is that there's very little circulation from the income of this business going into Africa. Most of what is going to happen is a big expenditure goes into purchasing the parts, because that's where the work is, that's where the money is. So a big fraction of the money will go into purchasing the parts, and then they're gonna now put in the amount of money that is maybe labor and then tax and profit and sell that to the people. So the money that will circulate within Africa is mostly money that will be paid in terms of labor and the tax that will be paid. By the way, I think they are getting a tax reprieve from the government, because it's a local assembly, and so they're going to get some tax reprieve, which is a very good support from the government. So that's basically it. The only thing that means, though, is that possibly maybe the cost of the product might go down, and if the cost goes down and the demand goes high, then the business is higher. But Africa is not gaining as much as China, because that's where they're getting the parts. China will gain more because more people want the vehicle. So that's it. That's how I look at the business. Let me look at Mobius Motors in Kenya. Mobius Motors is very interesting because it is they say it's a Kenyan business, but from what I see, it doesn't look like a very, very Kenyan business. Well, let me start with what I like. Actually, what I like about it is that they have a very interesting business premise, and that is to strip down some of the things that are not needed in a vehicle, so that they can reduce their cost and then capitalize on the things that they feel are needed for an African vehicle, for a vehicle that can maneuver the African terrain and the rough roads of Africa. So some of the things they were stripping down in the first in when they started were things like electric windows, AC, things that they don't need, leather seats, sorry. And so they were stripping down on all this and then reducing the cost of production of the vehicle so that it's more affordable for people. They have gone back there's Mobius 1, which had those features, and Mobius 2 now. They seem to have put back some of the features like electric windows, and it's not a bad business premise. They already have 200 pre-orders for the Mobius 2. The only problem I have with Mobius is that it looks like the whole top management are expatriates. Other than one member, everyone else is an expatriate. And don't get me wrong, the team is a dream team. They have a very wonderful team. People like Sun Ryong, people like Marcus Schroeder. These are big names. These are people that have worked in they have a lot of experience in the automobile sector. These are Harvard graduates. And even the guy pioneering this thing, the owner of Mobius, is actually a guy called Joel Jackson, who's a UK business entrepreneur, and he's won a lot of awards for entrepreneurship. And he started this venture when he went into Kenya and saw the need for such kind of vehicles. I'm not too excited about it. And also, the other thing I'm not too excited with Mobius is the funding is mostly external. There's been a lot of external investment from investors from outside the country. I think there has been, from what I see, it looks like an excess of $11 million invested from outside. And I don't know, but probably I don't think $11 million is all. There should be more funding, maybe from Joel Jackson himself and other people that have funded. I have been able to find the list of the investors, and only one looks African. That's Pan Africa Investment, and I don't know how much they have invested into it. So it doesn't look like an African affair at all. From what I can see from business sense for Africa, is that what will come in as a profit is very little, given that a big chunk of the salaries even paid, first of all, goes to the top guys who are expatriates. And then number two, investors are waiting for their income, because when you invest in a company, remember, you're expecting a return, which is what these guys are expecting. The other thing I'm looking at is the manufacture. It's a mix of manufacture and assembly, so it's not 100% car manufactured in Kenya. The design probably made by Joel Jackson and some engineers, maybe. I don't know who's done the design, but what I know is they are talking about 35% of the manufacture being done in Kenya. So that means 65% is exported and assembled in Kenya. So it's just 35% manufacture. So how much money exactly is going into Africa? I don't want to do the calculation. I could almost tell you that it's maybe up to only the amount that is circulating within Africa, up to 30%, because, or maybe 40%, because 35% is what is gotten from the manufacturer itself, and then a small fraction going in terms of salaries circulating within Africa. And then there's a big chunk that goes into investors, a big chunk of profit that goes into the owners, and also a big chunk that goes into paying salaries of these expatriates. So I'm not excited about Mobius too much. The other guys I want to talk about is IVM Motors in Nigeria. I'm excited about IVM Motors, just like I'm excited about Kiira. IVM Motors is 75% manufactured in Nigeria. That is just fantastic, because that means they're only importing 25% of the parts. That is fantastic for the African business. That means 75% of the total cost for manufacturing the car is circulating within Nigeria, within Africa. Beautiful. The owner, I think, is a guy called Innoson Chukuma. He has done a very good job in trying to build a business. I think from what I saw, they could have sold about 200,000 units so far. I think I will confirm the number. Should be about 200,000 units. That is fantastic. They are very good competitors of Mobius, because the business premise is based on minimizing the import of second-hand vehicles. And second-hand vehicles, if you know anything about second-hand vehicles, it has been a bit of an issue recently. In fact, Kenya reduced the number of years that you can import a second-hand vehicle from 8 years to 5 years. You cannot import anything older than 5 years, and that is important in trying to reduce the number of waste and number of being scrap and crap being sent into Africa, because that's a whole other business. I'll talk about it another day. It's a whole other business. I like the premise that they're trying to reduce the import of second-hand vehicles. They're trying to promote the use of new vehicles. That's very good for the environment. And also they're trying to do this by they're trying to make sure that the price point is quite fair, and they have not stripped down anything like Mobius. What they have done is they have actually improved on some features that are needed for the African roads. So they're saying they're making naturally rough cars. I love that sentence. It's a naturally rough car. It can maneuver the African terrain, going to the village, going everywhere, going. It's just fantastic. And they're also capitalizing on things like shock absorbers. They're capitalizing on things like ensuring that there's no overheating in the vehicles, and that is just fantastic. I love that. I love the premise of the business. I love the top management. I wasn't able to find the full list, but I did find a few people that are 100% the Nigerians. I think head of corporate communications, quality control manager, the general manager, all of them are Nigerians. They're all Africans, and that's a good thing because it shows me that there is a belief that we can find the right management to manage a car manufacturing industry within Africa. We don't have to have expatriates managing the whole process for us, and there is no having a top management team that is fully African, or even if you want to make it half African, even you want to make it 80% African, doesn't mean there's a compromise on the quality of vehicles. The quality of vehicles from IVM is very good. If you watch the movie Lionheart on Netflix, you'll actually be able to see these vehicles. They've used these vehicles in that movie, and that is just fantastic. I love it. I love that. The only problem with IVM is that there has been a lot of frustration towards the business guy, in Mr. Innocent Uma, and he's been in and out of court. I've followed his story, and it looks like he's always in and out of court for one thing or the other. And from what I am seeing, there are claims that some of the court cases being brought against him are actually fabricated. I don't know how true it is, but if it is, then it will be such a shame for the government, because this is a great opportunity for Nigeria. IBM has the potential to actually go beyond Africa. It has a potential to actually to spread beyond Nigeria and beyond Africa, because it hasn't taken away anything from the vehicle. In fact, it has added towards the vehicle. Remember, it's not only Africa that has rough roads. There are very many other countries that have rough roads, and this vehicle has the capacity to expand beyond the African market. So it would be such a shame if really these are fabricated stories against this guy. It would be nice so that there is more employment, there's more circulation of money within Africa, and there's very little going outside to import the vehicles. Or to import the parts from outside Africa. So for me, leading the pack from this perspective, IVM Motors, Kiira Motors is going to come up. I hope they're going to get started, and they're not going to be researching forever. That's the trick with business is you might end up researching and researching and researching and perfecting, and then you never get started. And then somebody else gets started before you get started, and before you know it, they're running the market because you're still taking too much time researching. So I hope you've enjoyed this session, and I'll see you next time. Next week I have something else to share with you. All right, see you. Bye bye.